What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and now the host of Epic Conversations 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner. Okay, I'm getting echoing here. Hold on. I think I know where this is coming from. All right, there we go. Echoing is gone. All right, so let's do that again. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And being part of that team in 2022 and 2021, reached out directly and indirectly to over 100,000 fathers around the world each one of those years. So as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And I am really excited about this evening. I'm always excited with conversations. But as I was saying to one of our friends that's here this evening, I always love bringing people together that I know are doing it with the right reason, right heart, and right intention. And you're going to be smarter. You're going to be more smarter out of this conversation. You're going to be more smarter than this conversation. So let's give a little context. For those who follow American politics, there's something called the Supreme Court. And recently, a few weeks ago, they overturned affirmative action in colleges and universities. I went, oh, that's interesting. I said, who could I get in my constellation to talk about that? Now, I don't use the word community anymore. I was told to use the word constellation. And I said, I have two incredible Black melanated women who are college professors, and they've never met each other. And I say, let me dream and put it out there in the universe to get them on the show to talk about this. Well, it's done deal tonight. So tonight we have Dr. Alicia Watkins and Dr. Tachi coming on the Dr. Vibe Show to talk about the Supreme Court of America ending affirmative action in colleges and universities. So before I bring them on, a little bit of housework. Always, please, if you can, like the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button so you get notified when the conversations come up. And also like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, just wherever you see it, like it. Also, to advertise your business service on a show, please email me at dr.vibe@the-drvibeshow.com. The housekeeping is done. I think it's time to bring the guests of honor to the stage. Dr. Alicia, Dr. Tachi. Finally, they are together on the Dr. Vibe Show platform. Yes. Dr. Tachi, you got your air conditioning?
No, I have no air conditioning, and there's a storm. So I had to come to the part of the house, which is why I'm in an unusual spot. So if you hear noise, that's the fan. But I'll be okay.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, well, welcome both you. And Dr. Tachi, we were hoping you would have your air conditioning by now.
So did I.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, but let's just before we get it started, Ryan Knight, who is my co-host on the Morning Vibe on 9 a.m. Monday and Friday morning, says, good evening, Vibe family. And also Divine Right, fellow soarer for Dr. Tachi, is in the house also. So, you know what? For people who may not know either of y'all, I'm going to say, if you could give just a short little intro of yourself, what you do, because I could tell what you do, but I think you wonderful ladies do it best. So, Dr. Alicia, short a little about you.
Yeah, well, I am a social worker. I like to present myself as a social worker. So especially the conversation we're going to have today, I see it from the lens of social issues and social problems. So I'm a social worker foremost. I'm also a therapist, a licensed therapist in Illinois. And I have my own coaching practice where I work with individuals and families. I'm also a full-time college professor. My semester hasn't gotten started yet, but I am 9 months out of the year a contracted full-time social worker educator. And what I do there is I train the next generation of adults who would go on to become therapists. So that's a really fun way of giving back. I'm also a researcher and a mom of 3 children, and I'm a wife, and I feel like I got enough titles. I'm trying to delete some of the titles I have, but I'm doing enough. So thank you for having me, Dr. Vibe.
The pleasure is mine, and kudos to yourself, Dr. Boyce, both your families, and all the people that you serve. So that's great. Dr. Tachi, it looks like you are frozen.
Oh no.
She's in a different area of the house. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull Dr. Tachi off. I'm gonna see what happens in the green room because she's frozen right now, but it's just gonna be us two for a little bit when we're getting this going on. So okay, yeah, she's signed off. She's gonna sign back on. So Dr. Alicia, let me ask you, when you heard the Supreme Court verdict, what was the first thought in your mind?
You know, I was actually, the first thought in my mind was, I wonder how this is going to translate to my university, my home university. And I know that, and I haven't heard anything from my home university, by the way. I figured there would be some statement to come out about no longer race-based consideration when it comes to selection, university selecting their freshman class. They cannot use race as a criteria. And so I was just curious. I also started thinking about what I remember reading, what happened in Michigan and what happened in California when they eliminated race-based, that the number of people of color enrolled in those institutions dramatically declined. So initially, those were the 2 thoughts. I thought about how is it going to affect students at my home institution, what my home institution was going to do. And then I thought about, oh goodness, look what happened in Michigan and California. Is this going to happen across the nation now, that race is not to be considered when you're picking your freshman class of students coming in? So those were my 2 initial thoughts about that. And you know, affirmative action has made a little bit of a dent in terms of what research has shown. And I just figured it just didn't do enough. So I would have been nicer to have seen this kind of double down. So initially, those were my 2 initial thoughts. I have other thoughts, but initially those.
We're going to give you time and space to get at them tonight. Dr. Tachi, we have you back. So can you give a little bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize. I think it had to do with the storm. My name is Dr. Tachi, as he said. I am a media professor, a content producer, and a journalist. I host conversations, as Dr. Vibe likes to call them, every week on a show called Media Scope. I am also the founder of the Indie Soup Media Network. And I am a college professor, but not full-time anymore. I am part-time.
Excellent. So, Dr. Tachi, we're going to fight through your Wi-Fi challenges. What was your first response when you heard about the affirmative action being ended by the U.S. Supreme Court in colleges and universities?
Okay, this is interesting. 2 first thoughts. I knew this was going to happen at some point. B, maybe now people will respect HBCUs for the excellent institutions that they were. And in fact, that was my first. Okay, good. Now maybe people will respect and go to HBCUs, and we just won't be an afterthought. And I don't teach at an HBCU currently, but I am a product of HBCUs for both of my an HBCU for both of my graduate degrees. And I know what that had done for me. I saw the level of excellence, but I also saw our own downplaying how excellent HBCUs are and downplaying the salience of the institutions. And what's tended to happen is people came running when something happened, like some sort of racial incident happened at a PWI, etc. Then everybody wanted to start to run. So I'm like, well, maybe now you will see how excellent we are and understand the role that we play in educating people, not just people of Black people, not just people of color, but people in general. I went to Howard University and we had a dental school, a medical school. Large numbers of all the graduate programs were not only Black. So we educated the world. So we have a role in educating the world. And I was like, not necessarily good. But I'm like, maybe now people will see that. And then the third thing I thought is like, it doesn't stop here. I'm just waiting for it to filter into the rest of our institution.
Okay. So, Dr. Alicia, you went to a HBCU, whatever they are. I never get that right. HBCU. Did
PWI,
affirmative action?
Yes.
Yes. You went, I like that better. Less PWI. Did affirmative action, has that helped you along your educational journey?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I got admitted. Well, first of all, my dad taught at Tuskegee University, and he taught there since I was 3 years old. So I grew up on a HBCU campus. And I remember talking to him, and he said, you can always come to Tuskegee, but you're right there in the Midwest, and they have like really good institutions there. He said, but it's up to you to pick. So that was all he gave me in terms of guidance. But I just feel like I was raised on that campus, and I went to the homecoming, and I was very, intricately involved, and everybody I knew was affiliated with the university. But my dad was a college professor at HBCU, and so all of his friends were college professors. It just was part of what I grew up with. So I always had, and I was born on campus at Tuskegee at John Andrews Hospital, which was the only hospital at the time when it was opened that would allow Blacks to come in and get medical care. Of course, this ground zero to Tuskegee experiment, that was another conversation. However, so that it's always been something that was important to me, but I didn't go to a HBCU. I had that option, and who's to say? The thing is that I graduated top 10 of my graduating class, and so at the time, if you graduate top 10, you're automatically admitted into into the university in the state school. So I don't know if affirmative action impacted me in any way, but I just knew that was the policy. If you went to state schools, you just depended on your rank. My SAT scores weren't that great, but I automatically was admitted. So I think that would be, that was my journey. And I will say, when I went to University of Chicago, gee whiz. Okay, so this is interesting because I was the third generation to go to University of Chicago. So I was actually one of those people that could put down legacy admissions. Yes. So wow, that's interesting. I never really thought about it like that.
There you go.
So legacy admission helped me. Maybe it helped me. I don't know. But I got there. I did pretty well at University of Chicago. It did help that my grandfather and my dad and then myself went to school there. But by the way, it's a little bit of a tangent. I do want to share that my grandfather, how he got affiliated with University of Chicago was that he applied for medical school because he graduated with an undergraduate degree in chemistry. This is in the 1940s. He applied for the medical school because his lifelong dream was to be a doctor. And when he applied for medical school, he was admitted. And when he showed up to class and they saw that he was African American, they pulled him to the side and they told him that he could no longer be part of the medical school. So he was uninvited into the medical school. And the professors met with him, sat down with him and told him, Francis, we would love to have you in to become a doctor. However, your classmates would be very uncomfortable with your presence, and it would cause too much of a disruption. So therefore, we're not going to, allow you to continue. But the chemistry department, there's a position for you in the chemistry department, and you can move across the street because if you've been on campus, it's the medical school and then chemistry. You can move across the street and you can take classes in the chemistry department, but you will not see, you can't become a doctor here. So he was always really hurt by that, because that's always been his dream. And, that's the reason why I think like affirmative action is important, is important to have at our colleges. Of course, he could have applied to Howard, but he had his roots in Chicago at the time and married my grandma and all of that. So, but yeah, I mean, but in that, when he was in the chemistry department, he worked with Percy Julian and worked in his lab and everything. So it turned out to be, favorable for him because Percy Julian, nobody else would take him as a chemist. And Percy Julian trained him and mentored him. And my grandpa's like, Percy Julian is just the most brilliant man I ever met. I mean, he's very fond of Percy Julian and the work he did in his lab to develop, I think it's what's currently called GlaxoSmithKline is part of
Wow.
Yeah, they bought him out and that's how Percy Julian became a millionaire and all of that. People burned his house down. But we can talk about integration all you want. Anyway.
No, thank
Sorry
you
for
for
a
that.
long answer.
No, it's
That's
okay.
amazing.
Thanks for that incredible story. So let's roll up our sleeves a little bit. What are the impacts to current melanated students, current families with this ruling? And have you had any conversations with any students or educators about this ruling?
Go ahead, Dr. Alicia.
Like I said, I was really waiting on an email because listen, when DACA, you remember DACA? DACA was there. If you were not, if you were brought here as a child, and you went to our school system and you were raised, but you were undocumented and you came over as a child, there was a lot of debate as to whether they should get financial aid and get support and money to go on to a higher education. And so when DACA was being debated, it was a big issue at my institution. Like they were like memos were flying everywhere and people were up at arms. How could we do this? And then they had a lot of Hispanic students who were undocumented. We had some at the time. We became like an open doors for people from the South, DACA students from the South who weren't able to go to college in the South, and we would open them up and let them come to our institution. It was a big deal. So far I have heard nothing. So I would really, and then another month campus will open up. So I'm going to hear and to see if there is some sort of statement, but it'll be something in the fall. I am teaching a class on diversity class in the graduate program. So we're going to be talking about it in the fall for sure, but not yet. I haven't had anything yet.
Dr. Tachi?
Yeah, I haven't necessarily or heard anything quite yet because this is still very new. Of course, conveniently, while colleges and universities, most of them were on a significant break for the summer. So I haven't heard anything yet, but my interest is definitely, I'm waiting to see how it affects and what this means for students and how they're able to reconcile all of this. Because personally, I believe with the whole affirmative action program anyway, people were just using it as a box to check off and were not very interested in real diversity and inclusion. They're just, okay, we met our legal obligation. If you ask me, maybe nobody did, but I'm telling you. So that's what I thought in the first place. But I'm also really interested to see the faculty response to all of this. I know just from I can only speak on my experience. From my experience, there are schools going to be very interested in I'll bring up HBCUs again because we do research in the area of things like diversity and inclusion, African images, et cetera, our research tends to be very centered around these types of things. So I'm interested to see the research that comes out of different camps on this. But I'm also interested to hear about the quote water cooler talk. I remember when I was at my old university, the moment, and I'm excited because you're supposed to be in a field or in a venue where there's like a quote open marketplace of ideas and people are wanting to discuss things. After all, came from a place where we're discussing everything, and then here I come, and you want to discuss things, people slunk back. You know how people, when they go to sneaking out of church, the one finger up, that's exactly what the faculty would do, the one finger up, slinking back into their offices.
Oh, we lost Dr. Tachi for a second.
Oh, she's so wrong. She's so spot on. She is so.
Go ahead, Dr. Alicia. Continue on. We just.
You know what? I so agree with her. I'm trying not to be cynical, but I am.
Just be honest. Just be honest with yourself.
I am very cynical. I mean, people think they have this view that college campuses are so liberal, and maybe there are, but there's so many racist liberals that I just really I'm really interested to see where the conversation is going to be. And she's right. When it's time to do something, they're just going to forget about it and go into their little office, their little silos, and just do what they have to do because it doesn't affect them totally. And I think another thing Dr. Tachi said that I thought was interesting is that this is just in higher education. And so if you look at the number of people who go to college, that's a small slice of our country. Where is this going to trickle into when it comes to employment and all the other areas where race is considered? And we know about implicit bias, how important it is. And you have to consciously think about diversity has to be something that you consciously have to deprogram yourself doing, because it won't just happen on its own, because a lot of times you're discriminating and you don't know that you're doing that. That's science tells us this. So I don't know. I just kind of feel like, that song, thank you for letting me
be myself again.
That's how I feel like a lot of white people are responding to this. They're like, thank you, Supreme Court, you could let me be myself. I'm gonna now be myself. That's how I feel. And I do think it's gonna be a backlash. And I hope that in the end, maybe we can think about separate but equal. Maybe we should think about stuff like that, because it's just not working. We don't fit in with them, and they're not. College campuses are doing a piss poor job of really making it totally inclusive, really having you have a seat at the table. And my cynicism is acting up, and I just
that's all right. Bring it here.
Man, screw it. Listen, you live in one country, I live in another. It's a country divided. But anyway.
Absolutely. So just we're broadcasting a little bit of this on Instagram Live. Welcome GC Bencherry. Welcome classic underscore C underscore gems. We're here on Dr. Vibe Show talking about the end of the U.S. Supreme Court ending affirmative action in colleges and universities in the United States. We are blessed and highly favored to have Dr. Alicia Watkins, and I believe we got Dr. Tachi back.
She's coming back.
She's coming back.
Yeah.
I thought she's not back. She's trying to come back. But some comments here from the audience. Regular Dr. Fitness IQ Cam, good evening, good night, says hello. Perry Douglas, another great brilliant mind. This is the Dr. Vibe show today. Dr. Watkins, Dr. Tachi, and the one and only Dr. Vibe. Good evening, doctors. All right.
There we go.
We are on fire. I don't know if you're able to answer this question from Ryan. That's why I'm hoping Dr. Tachi come back, because she grew up in the HBCU lens. But will this affect HBCUs able to admit based on race?
Oh, I don't know. Like, here's the thing. I mean, I think from what I know is that when you get an applicant, you always, when you get a pool of applicants at your at your institution, there's going to be students that you're going to just say, heck yes, we want these students. You know, race or no race, we want these students. And then there's going to be a group of students that you don't want at all. Like, like there's no way they're prepared at all. But it's the qualified students that are qualified. And I think that's the thing when you think about affirmative action, it's not like Black students are admitted into college and they just can't make it. Like they have, it's like everything being equal. It's like they have the exact same qualifications to get in. They are exceptional. You know, there's an exceptional pool of people. But what was happening is that out of the exceptional pool of people, universities were only picking the white students, you know, and they're ignoring the Black students, even though the pool of people were the same. So I think the idea was it's not like Black students are being admitted and they don't, you know, and they're part of the pool of unacceptable students. No, these are students or Latino students or whatever, diversity. So I think the idea was that diversity is good on college campuses because it helps white people figure out how to deal with the world, the reality of the world. You know, that was the whole logic of affirmative action in the first place, was so that we can have college campuses almost be a reflection of how we see the future of America being this melting pot. I guess I shouldn't be so cynical, but being part of this melting pot.
Just be yourself. Just be yourself, Dr.
You know,
Alicia.
theoretically, like that's the theory behind it. And that at some point we'll just do it naturally, so we don't need affirmative action. But it's like affirmative action is being taken away and they do need it. But anyway, so Dr. Tachi, what were you saying?
I don't know, damn it. I think there was a third. Oh yeah, so I was talking about the water cooler conversations, and I'm interested to see how faculty react to this, how they talk about this with their students, because part of the problem is, I think, in the academy, we don't really have honest, true conversations about things unless it's going to be a paper, a presentation, or a publication somewhere. And I think it needs to go beyond that, because these are students and they're dealing with real life. And it cannot just be on the faculty of color if you happen to be at a PWI. It cannot just be on the faculty of color to bring these things up. And often that's what happens. So I'm interested to see that.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you were away from us momentarily, Dr. Tachi, Dr. Alicia said that the whole liberalism of campuses really is not really reality when it comes to most American universities. Oh gosh. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Tachi.
Listen, it's pure rubbish. It's I think the liberalism exists in as far as it agrees with what they agree with. So I remember because if we're talking about liberalism, part of that is, again, the open marketplace of ideas and the freedom to express these ideas. I remember very well, our campus was known for bringing high profile speakers. So there was one speaker that they were going to bring who happened to be a Republican, and not one of these wackadoo Republicans. It just happened to be a Republican. They were like, I don't understand how you can bring this person in. I'm like, I'm sorry. Aren't you supposed to be open to different? Isn't that what the campus is about? So as long as it agrees with what they agree with or aligns with their beliefs, then they're okay with it. And that's not true. That's not true liberalism. That's not libertarianism. That's not any of that. So, you start to see and think, your eyes get opened as you're on these campuses. And people have so many misconceptions about what college campuses are like, and what they do and what professors do, etc. Often I tell people, the academy is worse than corporate America when it comes to things. Way worse.
Political. It's very political, very cutthroat. And honestly, like, I see college campuses really be run a lot by a lot of white women on college campuses. They're really strong. And don't cross them, because they'll be coming for you.
and the thing is too,
and white women's tears go afar.
And here's the thing, with corporate, it being worse than corporate, at least you get compensated for the wahala you encounter in corporate. Yes. You know you're going to, this is hell, but I'm going to get a $40,000 bonus or whatever your bonus happens to be. In the academy, the expectation is that you're doing this for teaching, research, and service, or research, teaching, and service, depending on what type of institution you're at. So the expectation is that you're doing this out of the love of the field and the goodness of your heart. And so you're not going to ask for any more money. And plus, we don't have any. So we want you to do these things for free. So there is a poverty mentality that is ingrained in faculty, and there's no discussion even in grad school, and this is a whole other thing, there's no discussion even in grad school of how do you make it, should you be a struggling professor? And I'm not trying to say that professors are struggling, but for the amount of work that you do, you are in no way compensated for the amount of work you do, but you would be in corporate.
Okay, just a comment here from Perry Douglas. Perry says, Dr. Watkins, don't get discouraged by the AA judgment. The Republicans have a long game and we don't. It is a mistake to believe you can depend on your oppressor to make change. Stay focused.
You know what? Actually, it was interesting because I was talking to Boyce about it the other day. And I was saying, you know what? Now that I actually think about it, the people who've helped me in my academic career have been Republicans.
Wow.
I can count on my hand, not all Republicans, but the ones that have helped me were Republicans. I can count on my hand 3 influential people who've helped me in my progress, in academia. All 3 of them were Republican. Now, there were probably some Republicans that didn't, but they were Republican. And I tell you, the people who have been like a thorn in my side, they were Democrats.
Wow.
So you really can't. I mean, that's what I meant when I said there are a lot of racist Democrats out there who just look at women's issues and then they look at you like, step back. This is all about women. I'm like, I don't share your demise against men. Like, I don't share that. They're like, oh, these white men. I said, no, I don't. White men have been quite nice to me. That's my personal lived experience. Like, and I wonder if it's unique to other people, but I'm like, no, who's been more of a thorn in my side, and I really mean it, is white women's tears.
Dr. Tachi, anything you want to add on
my experience? Yeah. And so, and those women, and those are the group of people who have benefited the most out of affirmative action.
Dr. Tachi?
You're right about that one. Yeah, it's interesting. I think when it echoing what she's saying or adding on to what she's saying, I think the people that really took me under their wings early in the career were not Republicans.
Oh, they weren't? Okay.
They were not. No,
okay.
No, they tended to be Democrats. In fact, where I was, they very, 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 very liberal, if that makes any sense. It's interesting. So they tended to be Democrats. That doesn't mean there's not one that's a Republican that's stuck in there that I didn't know. I think the point is that you have to take people as they are. Now, as a whole, you all may have deplorable, policies. People as a whole may not do things, but individually, maybe they helped in some sort of way. So I can see your point as well.
But I think it just stung a little more because you're just like, hey, we both in this struggle together. What's happening? Like, why the why the difference? Why the discrimination? What's going on? And I think that's what it stands out the most with me, because we're all supposed to be attached at the hip. We're not part of the majority. and you just kind of get disappointed, I would say. Very much disappointed.
Well, if you don't have expectations, you don't get
There
disappointed.
you go.
And that's what I have learned.
Yeah, I've learned that too.
I want to add in something I've been thinking as you're dropping knowledge bombs. Has there been anything about affirmative action amongst educators, melanated educators? Have you is it like we had affirmative action recently for students, but has there ever been, or do these campuses who you say are not very liberal, they never thought about colorizing their staff?
Well, they have. If you look at, and I know that Dr. Alicia and I are in two different areas, but I could tell you a little bit about my experience. I have actually worked with doing some research on the ACE-JMC, which is the accrediting board for journalism and mass communication departments. So when I was in the PhD program, I actually was helping to do some research looking at Standard 12, which was the standard that looked at diversity in journalism and mass communication departments. And so we were going through all of the departments that were accredited by ACE-JMC to see if they met the standard. And some of the things that we were finding were interesting. I think people have the misconception that when you graduate from a doctoral program, the world is your oyster. You can go teach any damn where you want. You can't. You have to go where there's a job. And often schools that are in places like University of Wyoming, Laramie, places in Iowa, they often have difficulty attracting talent like us because, quite frankly, we don't want to live there, because it's also a lifestyle thing too, that you're there. Where am I going to get my hair done? Are there things socially for me to do? If you're dating, what's the dating scene like? So you also have to think about it from a social and point of view, not just economic. So what we found in that study is that those were some of the things that were issues in terms of diversifying some of these journalism and mass communication departments, because of the fact that many of them were in places where, let's say in vernacular, Black folk don't want to live. So that's a thing. And they would have real initiatives to try and draw. And I'll tell you quickly, the reason I partially grew up in Buffalo, New York, and I'm the opposite from Dr. Alicia. I was born in the University of Michigan Hospital and grew up on the University of Michigan's campus until my dad graduated, and then he got a job at the University of Buffalo. Who wants to live there? Well, they did.
To your ear.
Exactly. Africans wanting to live there, please. But they, number one, gave him associate professor right away. So he skipped over that. And then number two, they really did a good job of showing, sending brochures and saying, oh, this is what is here to do with that, because they know that, not that Black people don't live there, but it's not like it's a huge overrun, especially at that time, with a whole lot of Black people. And so they have to show you some of the things that there are to do. So I think that there are efforts, I'm not saying everybody, but some departments at schools do make efforts to attract, but it's difficult when they're inside, they're a microcosm inside a larger city that is not very diverse, that may not be welcoming to Black people or faculty of color.
Yeah, and then once they attract you and you're there, what are they doing to retain you? You have to have the mentorship. You have to know the politics of everything that's going on. It's a chilly climate. It can be very chilly climate, more so than the snow. Like you be looking for, you be like, the weather is chilly, but it is. The temperature is much colder than it is outside.
It can be. And it's interesting because I know so many people that started off in places. For example, I had a colleague that I met at the National Association of Broadcasters, NAB. So I'm usually there every year, and her first job out of the PhD program was, I can't remember the name of the university, but it was in the Ozarks. When she told me that, I was like, How are you surviving? So she, it got better for her over time, but it was really difficult, finding a church and things like that. It was really difficult for her to find those things. But if you are, for some people, it doesn't matter. I can tell you for me, I am not living in some place. I am a city girl. I have to be in a major city. But just to add on that, I know a lot of people that this has been their case, and they've dealt with it in stride. They dealt with it knowing that staying there 3 years, about 3 years, would do wonders in terms of being able to jump someplace else, maybe that was more favorable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sitting here as you're talking, the struggles of being a Black faculty person. And it just so continues because you want to see your student body to be diverse. You want to see that in your classrooms. You want the faculty to be diverse. Not only that, but you want the curriculum to reflect diversity. You want, departments of African studies or African American studies. You want it integrated you want all of the diversity so that the students, when they graduate, will have an opportunity to make it in this increasingly diverse world that we're living in. And this affirmative action decision is such a setback, and I mean, I really hate it because a lot of universities, the only Black students you see are people on the basketball team and football team. Outside of that, you don't see any Black students. And I feel sorry for them because being a student athlete, which is a whole nother issue, you're really an athlete student. Let's just face it, like athletics it encompasses everything that they're doing. They don't have time for anything else, but they always got practice and training and games, and they're traveling, and they're not only that. One of our teams on campus, they require them to work the stands, work the stands and volunteer, record and edit film.
Come on.
They have them doing so much stuff that they don't have time.
Yet they cannot take endorsements.
I mean,
it's done now. There's something called NIL, name, image, and likeness.
But they're hungry, when they come back, the cafeteria is closed. They don't have a place to eat. Like, they don't have money. Their parents can't even afford to come see it. So the problems are surmounting. And this, I think, is a huge setback. It's a huge setback. And I'm hoping, the thing with the HBCU, Ryan Knight, it's sticking in my head. Maybe.
Yeah, sorry to just interrupt, Dr. Alicia. When you were gone, Dr. Tachi, Ryan had this question: will this affirmative action ruling, will it affect HBCUs able to admit based on race?
Now that's interesting. That's an interesting question. But then we have to look at the fact of, did they ever really admit only based on race? And I have to say the answer is no. Race is a consideration because of the fact that there was unfairness in terms of Black people getting into other institutions. They could not. So you had no choice but to start your own. However, race is not the only consideration when it comes to those things. So I don't know that it will be a big deal, because here's the other thing. How many non-melanated people are scrambling to go to HBCUs? Probably not a whole lot. So if they felt that, first of all, many of them don't consider our institutions as worthy anyway. So if it was a case where it was preventing others, non-melanated people, from attending these institutions, then I think people would take issue with it. There would be a problem. Right now, because they don't even consider us, if you ask many non-melanated people, where I remember when I was leaving, because I went to a PWI undergrad, when I was going to Howard for grad school, people were like, oh, what are you doing after this? I'm like, oh, I'm going to grad school at Howard. And some people are, where's Howard? How do you not know where Howard is? I said, you've never heard of Howard? No. So it shows that many people live within their own bubbles, where the Yales, the Harvards, the University of Texases are the ones that are important, and nobody knows about the Harris Stowe's, the Fisks, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't, to answer the question, that's hard to say, but I don't think that race was the determining factor for the. In fact, if anything, I think that HBCUs are more open to welcoming all types of students with open arms, if you ask me.
I really hope that the next year of freshman students, first year students in college, I hope they flood HBCUs with applications. That's my hope. I hope this ruling, because I was talking to Dr. Vibe, you were in and out, but I was talking to Dr. Vibe about, you know what, maybe separate and equal, maybe we can go back to that. Separate and equal. So separate but equal, you know, maybe they will flood. They will flood these HBCUs will be just bursting at the seams of African-American applicants.
Okay.
That's my
comment here from Perry Douglas says the AA judgment is just a microcosm of the broader forces in society. This just gives corporations and institutions the license to exert their power and discriminate, have a long game, or suffer.
You know what? Let's have, like, if I could take a page from my husband, okay, fine. Let's build Black corporations. Let's build Black-owned businesses. Let's have places for them to hire. He's hiring. He'll take you. You don't even have to have a college degree. All you need is the skills.
That's it. It's a skills-based society.
He hires somebody. He does not ask them where they went to college. He will interview them, get to know them. He wants to know what skills you have. And maybe that should tell us, do we really need to go to college? What's the relevancy of college anyway?
Okay. Dr. Tachi's on to something. Go ahead, girl.
We have really been bamboozled into a system that tells us that this is what you need, and then turns around and changes the rules mid-game. Not that we expected anybody to play fair in the first place, but not only have the rules been changed in the middle of the game, now you owe the fee, the player's fee for that. And the player's fee has compounded interest.
Yes.
So you are really onto something there. I say this, I think for the vast majority right now of people, college is probably still their key to networking, especially when they don't come from a background where, not even that their parents didn't go to college, but they may not be business owners. They may not be used to networking. I think college can give you that. College also is supposed to give you critical thinking skills. So the networking and the critical thinking skills. But as far as it guaranteeing you a job, no, that was never the guarantee. And because colleges are a business, they are there to make money. So of course they're going to tell you, if you say you want to write your thesis on underwater basket weaving, yes, that sounds wonderful. Let me help you. I will be your advisor for that, because it's going to make them money. And meanwhile, you don't know that there is no market for books on underwater basket weaving.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm thinking about the coddling. I read this article called "The Coddling of Colleges, of College Students." Coddling. How college students, they don't want nobody challenging them in the classroom. They don't want, it's consumer driven. It's like, that test was hard. And I've had so many students get a C on a test and say, excuse me, where's my A? And I was like, you didn't.
Oh, wow.
Earn an A. And they're like, well, I studied real hard. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. You know, I don't know what to tell you.
Excuse me, where's my A?
Yes.
But it's the entitlement. It's the entitlement where that is deserved. This could go down a whole lot of different tangents and rabbit holes. Definitely, but you know, I feel you. But
real peers, they be going to the dean and the provost. she didn't give me my A. I'm supposed to. She didn't tell me this would be on the. Yeah, I have study guides. I have all this stuff.
Wow.
I didn't have to. It's
Well,
like you have to
it's
school
generational.
these students now. I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
It's generational too,
Yeah.
because when you think about it, I wish I would have complained about anything like parents back then were like, what did you do to cause XYZ? If this is your fault somehow. And maybe that causes trauma for some Gen Xers or whatever. But the point is, you took accountability for what you did not do. Right. There are all sorts of other issues, but there's the accountability there. And I don't want to put this on all of this generation, but because colleges have now adopted a customer service mindset, which to me is foolish, because you are a business, but you're not a store. You are not Nordstrom. So that whole customer business type of thing, that already causes students to think that the customer is always right and I deserve an A because I'm paying for it.
Yep.
So that's problematic right there.
I said, it's my job to say it once. I said it once. Were you in class? Did you take notes? I'm not going to say it over and over again. I said it one time. Everybody heard it. Yeah. A students got an A. B students got a B. C students got a C. That's what it is. Yeah.
I want to bring the conversation back on
this
decision.
Let's go back to
that's all right. That'll be another show. That will be another show.
It does bring into question what's the relevancy of a higher education degree anyway. So it does bring that into question. Well, so yeah,
I'm parking like that for a future conversation between both of you two. But I want to get back now. What is this decision's impact on the future of African American culture?
This is interesting. If you don't mind, Dr. Alicia, and Dr. Vibe, 3 doctors. I love this. So on African American culture, college is just one aspect of African American culture, and cultures, plural, in cultures that are deeply entrenched in all sorts of other things: food, folkways, medicine, tradition. College is just one small part of that. So what does it do to it? If you were to ask me, nothing. Does it have an effect on a possible earning power? Yes, absolutely. But in terms of culture, I don't think it has very much, because we maintained a culture or cultures before we were even allowed to go to college. So I really don't think in terms of culture, it will have a huge significant effect, because we're going to do what we do anyway. We're going to continue to do what we've always done. So yes, that's one small part of it. And those are things that we can discuss. But on the whole, if anything, we've learned over the years how resilient we are. To me, this is just one more thing that's added to the plate of other rubbish that people of color and melanated people have to deal with, right? This is just one more thing. It is not going to break us, because if we were going to be broken, it would have been during the Middle Passage, and you see what happened there. So
yeah, it's funny, like back when my dad went to college, it was he didn't have all the debt coming out, and it was the Pell Grants and what was that through the military grant everybody was using back then? What was that called? I can't remember.
The GI Bill.
The GI Bill. Like college admissions absolutely exploded during that time. Like everybody was going to college, and that in that moment was the ticket for a lot of Black people up out of poverty, was to become educated. It worked back then. Now it really is a ticket for Black people to be in so much debt. And when it comes to graduating, compared to, what is it? African American person with a college degree makes about as much as a white person with no college degree, or even, so it doesn't weigh out. It's not as impactful as it used to be. So maybe it's taken away from the relevancy. And, that's something that we have to contend with. And, the alternative are getting into those kind of unionized jobs like carpenters, painters, things like that. And I'm sorry, but it is very difficult to get into those jobs. I know people who go to the community college and have taken every single painters, all of those sort of entry-level stuff, and there's a lottery. There's a lottery on whether someone gets into the union job. We hired an assistant to help with us around the house, and they were doing some stuff for Boyce's business. And he was just like, you know what? I'm going to work for you guys until my number is called, because they had a lottery to get into those unionized jobs where it didn't require a college education. But painters make a lot of money. Plumbers make a lot of money. They make a ton of money. The engineers or whatever, engineers union, they make a ton of money. It's unionized. Yeah, you start at the bottom, but he was an apprentice for many years before his number. It's a lottery. It's so hard to get in. And you talk about legacy, you know, you have to know somebody to get in. So it is just, the alternative is going to be really difficult for us. But in terms of our culture, you know, there's something to think about. Going to college, being in, I know you're in a sorority, having that being an option, feeling good about yourself, leaving there with friendships, and you're forming this bond with people. Like the people I went to college with, I have a bond with them. You know, like, hey, that's my friend from college. You go back to the reunions and you're an alumni. Like, there's something to it. And, you know, they need you to come back to the basketball games and football games. It's like universities, really, they're going to ask you for money, you know, so it's a system that they do make you feel a little special. And you know, that sort of thing, I'm really interested, time will tell about what impact this will have on how we as a group of people look at college educated individuals, and that's going to have an effect on a dwindling number of people. I think that'll be fascinating.
Can I add something as well? Yeah. I think this is all really this is like spot on and interesting. I think also when we're talking about trades, etc., I remember years ago, like when I was in high school, if you were in the vocational program, you had the opportunity to go to school for half the day, and the second half of the day was going to trade school. So that was for hair, automotive, any of those types of things. And you would come out at the end, you know, with some sort of licensure so that you could do that straight out of high school if you wanted. They've really done away with most of those vocational programs. So, you know, that would be one thing to see to bring that back. But even if it doesn't come back on the high school level, and I'm speaking specifically to HBCUs, and I know that community colleges do this to an extent, right? But many of them are also very focused on an academic education. Whereas if we could take some of the HBCUs that could offer some of those things, you take some of the, because I remember when I taught at Morgan State University, they had a very robust program to catch students up to college level. So if you weren't there yet, they had reading, they had writing, and those types of things. They're like, this is a college, but they're trying to catch people up to the 4-year college thing. And their thing was, whosoever shall come to be educated, come on. So if we take that same energy and you look at vocational programs, and vocational programs also, not just in terms of doing, but owning your own plumbing business, owning your own electrics. What is it? Electronics, electrician,
electrician,
electrical, right? So being an electrician, but then owning a business, right? So part of our thing is you do not become wealthy by working for someone else. You become wealthy by ownership, and that's of several different things. So I think part of the thing is also to encourage ownership of those types of things and businesses in those areas. Is it a pain to run a business sometimes? Yes, but it's needed. It's needed.
Okay, just catching up on comments here. Welcome, Roger Dundas. Good night, all, he says. Also, Roger says, I think the trades is where it's at. Perry says, The reality is your economics determines your culture.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Doc. You want to say something to that, Dr. Tachi?
Yeah, you know what? You're right to an extent. I think, but I think culture is more than economics. I think that before money, culture existed. Our cultures existed. I remember my dad would tell us, stories of when he was little. You could still buy a bag of peanuts for 5 cowrie shells. So, money and systems of currency are relative, right? And relatively new. So I think even before that, your culture exists. So to an extent, yes, but then to another extent, culture supersedes economics.
Okay. Christopher Lawrence says, "Hi and good evening. Seeing that the ruling of affirmative action is now a thing, curious, is there, quote, a concrete answer, unquote, as to why this is now being removed from the societal norm?"
I would think from what I read was that we're in a post-racial society, and what they're encouraging is universities to look at economics. Actually, they're encouraging them to look at economics and diversifying campuses in terms of like a poor white person in rural countries, rural cities, rural places. The admissions should be, instead of based on race, it should be based on just diversity of backgrounds. So meaning economic background. So someone who came from a poor community versus middle class versus upper class. That's what the focus, that's what I read, that they wanted that focus to be purely on your background, diversifying your background. Because what they were saying, I think the case at Harvard was that, okay, so look at the Black students who graduate from Harvard. All of them come from really, they went to Phillips Elixir, they come from very privileged backgrounds anyway. Yes. So it's not like, it's not like they're picking people from the projects to come to Harvard and study. No, it wasn't like they really were diversifying. And so I think that was sort of like the thrust when I was reading something about it. They were like, no, it should be more on economic diversity and not necessarily race diversity, because there's so many.
Yeah, but in America, you can't do one is hooked to the other.
Yeah.
To me, like,
yeah,
you want diversity in economics. Well, the people who do well economically on the whole in the United States don't look like any of the people on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Well, we haven't talked about Clarence Thomas, because I think
let's go.
Sorry.
This has been like, this whole thing has been like his personal issue. His personal issue. Why he wanted, that's been his labor of love, was to get rid of affirmative action, because he felt like it made him, of course, he went to Yale, right? Of course, because all of them went to Yale. But all of the Supreme Court justice, right? They all went to Yale. I think so.
Yep, either Yale or Harvard, most of them.
Yale or Harvard.
But your husband did something very interesting on one of his conversations, saying when Clarence was growing up, he had a poster of a certain man named Malcolm X in his room.
He did. Yeah, he was part of that whole movement, but that was short-lived, of course, I think. That was short-lived.
But he and I'm just putting facts out here, he benefited from affirmative action.
He did. He went to Yale because the very first year he got into Yale, I believe, was the very first year they have affirmative action. But when you ask him about it, he says, yeah, but I felt as if everybody looked at me like I was the token, like I didn't belong there. And what he's losing is that affirmative action doesn't give people a leg up. Affirmative action is saying, out of all of the applicants that are qualified, we're going to pick so many African-American qualified individuals. So every affirmative action doesn't allow you to be accepted into programs that you normally wouldn't be accepted in. You're qualified. So everybody's there is the same. Your test scores, everything equal. How are we going to pick our incoming class so that it represents diversity? So he never addressed that part, but he always felt like he was the token, and that people made fun of him and treated him badly because of affirmative action.
So how noble of you to want to save all Black children from the same plight that shut up. I'm just tired of this man. I am tired of this man. If you felt like that, that's you. That's on you. How dare you preclude anyone from an opportunity because you felt a certain way? Selfish, as per usual. He definitely did benefit from it, and he's the type of person. How it must be to hate yourself that much, that you would sabotage other people, because this is what this is, sabotage. You hate your Blackness that much that you sabotage. But that is just sad. I just feel sorry for you. That is sad that you hate yourself and your Blackness that much that you would pull the ladder up as soon as you got to the top. And you just pulled that ladder up.
And, you know, it's interesting. I do agree with you about the self-hatred, because he wasn't even raised by his own parents. His mother gave him up. And I'm just like, how could you started life in poverty, and there is no conversation about his father at all. Where's his dad? I don't know his dad. And his mom sent him away. So your first years of life is traumatized, because, you know, how are you going to think that you're worthy if your mom and dad don't even take care of you anymore? You go and live with your grandparents. I love my grandparents, but I want my parents, my own parents, right? So I don't know, like, how that's got to have an effect on him, and how he clearly hasn't worked through it. He's working through it through us, you know, and in affirmative action. It is a self-hatred that's there. And he's as dark as he is, but he sure is surrounded himself around whiteness.
Because somehow he feels that makes him white adjacent. That proximity to whiteness makes him whiter. And I'm going to do things to show them I too, America, am white. And my thing is, I don't care. I don't give two damns what the background is and why you're doing this. I understand where it comes from. I don't excuse it. That's why you go and see someone like a Dr. Alicia to work through those problems, and don't make your problem my problem. How dare you? How very dare you?
He thinks he done good for the world.
All right. Sorry. Perry says, please don't waste oxygen. Waste oxygen on Clarence Thomas. Divine Right also goes, agreed, Perry. What a waste of breath. There's another term that Dr. Tachi likes to use. Let's see. It's
waste of
Ryan.
Skin.
Yeah, yes, I was waiting to hear that. And Ryan says a key part of the argument I saw was that Asian students with high grades not getting over Black students with lower grades. So that's
where was this happening? That would be one thing. Where was this happening?
I think that was the base. I don't remember the school, but it was happening at a college or university.
It was happening. And I think what the university was saying was that there's a ranking system. So yeah, they look at grades, they look at test scores, but they also look at personality. So that was part of the mark.
Right.
The marking.
Right.
So a lot of the Asian students scored high in the test scores and all that, but in terms of like outside non-academic
extracurricular activities,
activities, all of those things, they were ranking much lower in terms of, I guess, for lack of a better word, likability or personality. They were scoring really low on that. So it ended up being that at the end, although it's a composite, like they make the decision based on everything. They look at everything. They look at the person, they look at the test scores, they look at the grades, they look at race, they look at background, they look at all of these different factors, and you get a score. So I think what happened was that a lot of the Asians, because they weren't as well-rounded, it was just basically school and school and more school. They weren't doing other stuff, so they were ranking lower, even though they would have a perfect SAT scores. Yeah, they earned their points there, but they lost points in other areas of being more well-rounded. And that is true. That did have an impact on entry.
And colleges,
you just look at test scores, your whole entire incoming class is going to be nothing but Asian people.
Well, but there's a whole thing with that, and I'm sure you know what. I'll talk about that in a minute. But colleges want well-rounded students because part of the thing is, let's be real, academics are not what brings in the money to colleges. It's not. Usually it's athletics that carries the weight of that, and it's other things as well. It's depending on where you are, it may be the arts. So there may be wealthy donors who will build these big, where I was, the wealthy donors built this huge theater and were the reason we had a performing and visual arts department, right? So they're looking at all those other things. At the end, they're looking at how do we increase our bottom line, because it is not just tuition that's going to do it. And there, you know, that it's not just academics, because academics is far and few in terms of the dollars when it comes to grants, etc. It's not that much compared to some of the other things. And so they're looking at what are the students that are going to be able to support the total vision of the school and our total mission. So when we look at, and this is not all Asian students at all, but when we look at some Asian students, I've worked with a lot of Chinese people, and they always tell me, well, our thing when we were in school is, yeah, we would get in trouble if we didn't know it, but it was just like memorization and not really internalizing the information. So there was a lot of memorizing, but not really internalizing it, from what they told me. So when we look at that, you're memorizing and not necessarily internalizing the information, and you're also not well-rounded. Yes, you probably will score lower on some of these things, especially when maybe the thing is that people are not aware of what the scoring system is, and they think it's all based on academics. Oh, well, if you're an A student, you're going to get in where you want. Well, not really. Based off of another A student who also does community service, who's also a leader in their church or their mosque or their temple, who also does other things. If you only have all A's, you pale in comparison. And I think this is what people have to understand. And I don't think it's made clear. And so people think the A is the only reason you got into a college. And it's much more than that.
Yeah, it really is. And I remember, like, when I was getting my doctoral program, the Asian students, they didn't show up to anything social. Like, when it came to like social, they only came to class, and that's the only time you saw them. Like, they weren't really there. I mean, seriously, they were kind of like, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here, I'm gonna do the work. And they were like, I got friends. I got my family and friends at home. I'm not here to be your friend. Like, they were like, serious, like, I'm not, like, they didn't integrate socially into the campus, you know, so they just didn't see education in that rounded sort of way. And they never showed up. We would have like events, and we'd have like social time. We'd have like all these different things. They're coming to class though. They're going to do their work, but they're not coming to anything outside of that. No, they're not coming to the basketball game. No, they're in the library. And that's about it. And if you want to hang out with them, maybe they'll let you in their study group. Maybe, but probably not. Like, they're studying with their people.
Yeah. So, and you know what the thing is, I think it's okay because every student's experience is different, and it's a cultural thing where, I mean, even, and it goes beyond Asians. Sometimes, you know, depending on like countries, quote, of the South, even with African students, even with, you know, this Caribbean students, even though, you know, Africans and Caribbean people, we like to enjoy. We like enjoyment now. But, you know, the thing is, you're there for a purpose and to get good grades. So sometimes the social aspect takes a back seat because of that type of thing. So I can see both sides of it, honestly.
Okay. The lawsuit was brought about by Asian students from Harvard, as Ryan's done some research for us. Also, Perry says, yeah, that's the white conservative case narrative, but not the truth. It's about a ranking score, but the conservatives use an Asian person to bring the case. That is right. That now he is right. They did, and used grades.
Mm-hmm.
So the conservatives
they were being used as a pawn,
they were,
as usual, to
Mm-hmm.
pit people of color against each other, and we fall for it every damn time.
Yep.
Every bloody time we fall for it. At what point do we say, you know what, this is probably a ploy, stay vigilant? We never do.
Yeah, because they knew they had the votes. They knew they had the votes in the Supreme Court. They knew they had to strike now, because they're like, whoa, let's just do before someone leaves or retires, and we're not able to bring it up again. So it was timing.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Christopher says, it appears utilizing tentative language that society is on a conquest to separate the haves and have-nots. Welcome to capitalism. However, what is more important than what is more apparent, folks can turn their passions into economical gains. And he also says, curious, in America, is there access to funding to open vocational school programs? I don't know. I don't know if the ladies know either.
You know what?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know for sure. I know that often the focus tends to be on here, at least from what I've seen, the focus tends to be on funding what is already available, because we've all heard that, the whole thing with, even though this is slightly different, with charter schools. And there are a lot of people that are very anti-charter school because it takes funding away from the public school system and resources that could be used in the public school system. Whether or not that's the case is a different thing. But I think that from what I've seen here, that the emphasis tends to be on, okay, well, we already have this high school, this continuing education program that has this. So let's see what we can do about more funding for that, rather than starting new programs. That's only from what I've seen here. I don't know how it works elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm not against the whole funding for vocational programs or beefing up vocational programs. I mean, it's way cheaper than going to a 4-year university. You can get, you can take all of your, I teach in a professional program. So you have to have a college degree or you can't be a social worker. So why not take the first 2 years at a community college or some vocational program, and then your junior, senior year, your last 2 years, take it all in your social work major and become a professional. You can do education that way, nursing, things like that you can do in that way. And that's why universities like mine, we work very closely with our community college to make sure that they can come right on into our professional programs. So, I mean, we need colleges because, professional program, you can't be a social worker unless you graduate from college, or a nurse, or a physician, of course, or, there's certain jobs you're not going to be able to enter. And we need diversity in those areas, education, law, things like that. Yeah.
So, and Perry says here, like I said, the Republicans have a long game. Where's ours?
Yeah, I mean, who's to say? Right now we have a Supreme Court that is very right-leaning. And then, who's to say in the future it'll filter in? We don't know who the presidency, it's got a election coming up. Who's to say it'll sway back another way? But that's where we are right now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have come to an end of an epic conversation. I know it's been a long day for both of you ladies. So what I would like to ask is final comments from each one of you. Any calls to action for melanated people? Actually, you know what? I do have another conversation piece quickly. What impact is this going to have outside of college and universities in the private sector?
I wouldn't be surprised if the way things are going, because I was talking about at universities, it's just a small segment of our society, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to eventually kind of filter into the rest of, corporate, even government positions.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
If it gets into, if it's going to filter into those areas. And I think that maybe this will be a wake-up call to Black people, that we can start our own businesses and do our own stuff. Let's get Tulsa. Remember what happened to Tulsa, Black Wall Street? Let's get Black Wall Street. Maybe this will unite us, because other people aren't going to see how great we are. And even if they do, they're going to help themselves. They're going to help people who look like themselves. And so maybe this is an opportunity for us to give each other an opportunity. Maybe, maybe this will be what's needed for all of us to look at Black institutions, Black businesses, Black corporations, run corporations, and then maybe that'll filter all of the beautiful, talented minds in those areas. So separate but equal. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe that's what is going to happen in the long run.
Final words, Dr. Tachi?
So I think that it will be interesting to see what this does in other sectors, but to me, it was only a matter of time before I'm like, yeah, it's here now. When is it going to filter down to the rest of society and the economy? And as I said before, for many companies, this was just checking off a box and being compliant. It was not a real attempt at diversity and inclusion. Even the people that they would hire for diversity and inclusion, all that was fluff, because they weren't really interested in real conversations about it. It feels like now this is going to be the excuse to say, oh, well, I don't have to do this anymore, and they won't do it. But then that's, as Dr. Alicia is saying, that's when we need to look at our own strength and our own power and our own things. And like for the companies that are really interested and know, and I'll take, for example, fashion, I'll take design, I'll take those types of industries where not only do our dollars matter, but our ideas matter. They're going to be like, no, we need to make sure there's a diversity of people out there, because the bottom line is, if people don't see themselves reflected, they're not going to buy, and they'll be quick not to buy from us. So those are the industries that I really see them paying attention, because the bottom line is going to be affected. And those that are corporately money, it boils down to that, because look, if it sells and I don't see myself, I'm not going to patronize. And so they probably will be trying to stave that off and keep it for that reason. But then also there probably are some companies that practice corporate responsibility, that are interested in seeing a diverse workforce, because they know that's what it is out there. And so they're the ones that are going to continue to be diverse in terms of their hiring, because that's what they've always done, rather than the people that are trying to, we have a diversity and inclusion person too. So it just remains to be seen. But those who get it, and they're going to continue doing what they do. And those who don't will stop, because now they don't have to do it anymore.
Okay. Great final comments. Last things here. Christopher says, pardon me, the ace in the deck is to work towards career-focused employment that goes beyond a job. Careers that build infrastructure, i.e. construction, technology, and business, etc. We need to fill those gaps with more diversity now versus later. Perry Douglas says, thank you, doctors. Good night. And if you want to get in touch with both of these wonderful ladies, Dr. Alicia, you can find all things Dr. Alicia at Coaching with Dr. Alicia, and on Instagram at Coaching with Dr. Alicia. Dr. Alicia, do you want to do a quick plug-in for your virtual retreat?
Yes. I'm doing a virtual retreat the first weekend in August, Saturday, August 5th, and Sunday, August 6th. And it is all about healing. It's all about building, and it's all about wellness. And it's specifically designed for people who, you've had trauma in your past. And we're going to spend 2 days talking about how you can build a plan for wellness so that you can love the way you want to love. And it's a 6-month plan. It comes with a workbook. I have wonderful speakers coming in talking about things. And so it is a work as you go, at your own pace, in your own privacy. And of course, I'll be available for anybody who has questions and want to talk to me about things that come up. But yeah, you can go to draliciawellness.com and register, because it's coming up soon in a couple of weeks. So thank you, Dr. Vibe.
No problem. And then Dr. Tachi, what's going on? There's always things going on in your world also. What's coming up?
Always. Besides the lack of air conditioning, you can actually very soon watch great programming. Speaking about, owning and ownership, great programming on Indie Soup Media, which is a new network, OTT and web network, and also exists on social media that will display the best and greatest independent programming. And so you'll be able to watch that soon. And so stay tuned for details on that. But follow us on social media. We're at Indie Suit Media on social platforms like Instagram, also on YouTube. We're on Facebook and Fanbase and Twitch. Indie Suit Media everywhere.
And also Wednesday nights.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Also, I guess I always I assume people already know about Mediascope, but they may not. You're right. So Mediascope is a show about all things media tech and pop culture that I've been doing actually now. Oh, in 6 days, we will be 8 years old. So we started July 29, 2015. So we will be 8 years old, celebrating 8 years of media tech and pop culture fun and foolishness. And that happens every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time on a whole bunch of platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. Also, we do a pre-show on LinkedIn as well. We also do a pre-show on Instagram Live at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So join in. We have a lot of fun.
Food trucks and all. So I'm going to let both of you go. Thank you. I have a feeling there's going to be more conversations like this going forward. Dr. Tachi, next time we see you on air, you'll have to have air conditioning, though. I'm not going to let you back on without air conditioning.
Thank you.
Bye.
Tell the air conditioning people
Take
that.
care, ladies. Have a great night. Thanks again for an epic conversation. Take care, Dr. Alicia. All right. That is it, family. Another epic conversation done tonight. Wow. So thank you, everybody, for another one, and appreciate you. So some final things before we call it a day. I just got to get some things out of the way. Okay. So let's wrap some things up. As always, please like the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Please like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook and LinkedIn. Again, if you want to advertise your business or service on the show, please email me at dr@thedrvibeshow.com. Also, if you want to get in touch with me, there are all the contact information places: website, email address, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So website, the drvibeshow, email dr@thedrvibeshow.com, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, The Dr. Vibe Show, Twitter @drvibeshow, Instagram @the Dr. Vibe Show. So before we sign off, there are a few more comments here, and I'm just taking a look at something on my screen. All right. So I'm going to go back and forth between some things here. All right. Christopher Lawrence says, thank you for this reinforcement. Do we understand the assignment? Good stuff. Divine Right says, great show, doctors. And also, happy anniversary, Mediascope. Well, you're part of that anniversary, food truck lady. You're the food truck queen. Divine Right has got her pseudo food truck going on every show of Mediascope. So a few things. If you want to catch me Sunday permanently, 4 conversations a week. Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. I host Black Canada Talking. And then on Monday and Friday mornings at 9 a.m. I co-host and co-produce The Morning Vibe with myself and Ryan Knight, who was in the conversation tonight. So thanks for supporting tonight. And then Saturday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern time, we do something called State of Things with Alicia, Jill, and Lala. Make sure your ears are plugged for it. It's a wild conversation, but it's a great conversation. So this is how we close off. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions. Aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Remember to give yourselves grace, and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. And one last thing, you can watch replays of this epic conversation and all the conversations I do. The Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. and the Dr. Vibe Show website. So that is it. We are done. Remember to give yourselves grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. God bless, peace, well, keep the faith, and walk good. Just give me a second here. I got to do something here. Okay, here we go. Listen.